In Greek mythology, the Amazons were a race of woman warriors. Herodotus reported that they were related to the Scythians and placed him in a region bordering Scythia and Sarmatia. Other historiographers place them in Anatolia, or sometimes Libya. Notable queens of the Amazons are Penthesilea, who participated in the Trojan War, and her sister Hippolyta, whose magical girdle, given to her by her father Ares, was the object of one of the labors of Hercules. Amazon warriors were often depicted in battle with Greek warriors in Amazonomachy in classical art. The Amazons have become associated with many historical people throughout the Roman Empire period and late antiquity. In Roman historiography, there are various accounts of Amazon raids in Anatolia. From the early modern period, their name has become a term for female warriors in general. Amazons were said to have founded the cities and temples of Smyrna, Sinope, Syme, Gryna, Ephesus, Prytania, Magnesia, Crete, Pygella, Latoria and Amestris. According to legend, the Amazons also invented the cavalry. Etymology. The origin of the word is uncertain. It may be derived from an Iranian ethnonym *Amazon, warriors, a word attested as a denominal verb in Hesychius of Alexandria's gloss, mu alpha zeta alpha kappa alpha rho alpha nu pi omicron lambda epsilon mu epsilon nu pi epsilon rho sigma alpha iota, and which also appears together with the Indo-Iranian root *kar, make, in Sanskrit karma. The Hittite researcher Friedrich Cornelius assumes that there had been a Landasi with the capital Chagazar in the area of the Thermodon Iris Delta, on the coast of the Black Sea. He brings its residents in direct relation to the Amazons, namely based on its name and its customs. The location of that land, as well as his conclusions, are controversial. Gerhard Polar, alternatively, a Greek derivation from *N Minnesota G.W. John S. manless, without husbands, has been proposed. An explanation deemed unlikely by Hjalmar Frisk. 19th-century scholarship also connected the term to the ethnonym Amazigh. A further explanation proposes Iranian *Kmajana, virility killing, as source. Among classical Greeks, Amazon was given a folk etymology as originating from and mazos, without breast, connected with an etiological tradition once claimed by Marcus Justinus, who alleged that Amazons had their right breast cut off or burnt out. There is no indication of such a practice in ancient works of art, in which the Amazons are always represented with both breasts, although the left is frequently covered. Adrien Mayer suggests the origin of this myth was due to the word's etymology. Origins. The legendary Amazons were thought to have lived in Pontus, which is part of modern-day Turkey near the southern shore of the Euxine Sea. There they formed an independent kingdom under the government of a queen named Hippolyta or Hippolyte. This area is known to have been occupied in the Late Bronze Age by a transhuman group known to the Hittites as the Khazgar, though they were not directly known to Greeks. Modern archaeologists have determined that they finally defeated their enemies, the Hittites, about 1200 BCE. They left no inscriptions. The Amazons were supposed to have founded many towns, amongst them Smyrna, Ephesus, Sinope, and Paphos. According to the dramatist Aeschylus, in the distant past they had lived in Scythia, at the Palace Meotis. According to Plutarch, the Amazons lived in and about the Don River, which the Greeks called the Tanais, but which was called by the Scythians the Amazon. The Amazons later moved to Themyscira on the river Thermodon. Herodotus called them Androctones, and he stated that in the Scythian language they were called Oi or Parta, which he asserted had this meaning. The myth. In some versions of the myth, no men were permitted to have sexual encounters or reside in Amazon country, but once a year. In order to prevent their race from dying out, they visited the Gargarians, a neighboring tribe. The male children who were the result of these visits were either killed, sent back to their fathers, or exposed in the wilderness to fend for themselves. The girls were kept and brought up by their mothers. and trained in agricultural pursuits, hunting, and the art of war. In other versions, when the Amazons went to war, they would not kill all the men. Some they would take as slaves, and once or twice a year they would have sex with their slaves. The intermarriage of Amazons and men from other tribes was also used to explain the origin of various people, for example, the story of the Amazons settling with the Scythians. In the Iliad, the Amazons were referred to as Antianeri. The Amazons appear in Greek art of the Archaic period and in connection with several Greek legends. They invaded Lycia, but were defeated by Bellerophon, who was sent against him by Iobates, the king of that country, in the hope that he might meet his death at their hands. The tomb of Myrene is mentioned in the Iliad, later interpretation made of her an Amazon. According to Diodorus, Queen Myrene led her Amazons to victory against Libya and much of Gorgon. They attacked the Phrygians, who were assisted by Priam, then a young man. In his later years, however, towards the end of the Trojan War, his old opponents took his side against the Greeks under their queen Penthesilea, a Thracian birth, who was slain by Achilles. One of the tasks imposed upon Heracles by Eurystheus was to obtain possession of the girdle of the Amazonian queen Hippolyta. He was accompanied by his friend Theseus, who carried off the princess Antiope, sister of Hippolyta, an incident which led to a retaliatory invasion of Attica, in which Antiope perished fighting by the side of Theseus. In some versions, however, Theseus marries Hippolyta, and in others, he marries Antiope and she does not die. By this marriage with the Amazon, Theseus had a son, Hippolytus. The battle between the Athenians and Amazons is often commemorated in an entire genre of art, Amazonomachy. In marble bas-reliefs such as from the Parthenon or the sculptures of the mausoleum of Halicarnassus, the Amazons are also said to have undertaken an expedition against the island of Leuci, at the mouth of the Danube, where the ashes of Achilles had been deposited by Thetis. The ghost of the dead hero appeared and so terrified their horses, that they threw and trampled upon the invaders, who were forced to retire. Pompey is said to have found them in the army of Mithridates. They are heard of in the time of Alexander, when some of the king's biographers make mention of Amazon queen Thalestris visiting him and becoming a mother by him. However, several other biographers of Alexander dispute the claim, including the highly regarded secondary source, Plutarch. In his writing he makes mention of a moment when Alexander's secondary naval commander, one Zacritus, was reading the Amazon passage of his Alexander history to King Lysimachus of Thrace, who was on the original expedition. The king smiled at him and said, "And where was I then?" The Roman writer Virgil's characterization of the Volscian warrior maiden Camilla in the Aeneid borrows heavily from the myth of the Amazons. Jordan's Getica, purporting to give the earliest history of the Goths, relates that the Goths' ancestors, descendants of Magog, originally dwelt within Scythia, on the Sea of Azov between the Dnieper and Don rivers. After a few centuries, following an incident where the Goths women successfully fended off a raid by a neighboring tribe, while the menfolk were off campaigning against Pharaoh Vessosis, the women formed their own army under Marpesia and crossed the Don, invading Asia. Her sister Lampedia remained in Europe to guard the homeland. They procreated with men once a year. These Amazons conquered Armenia, Syria, and all of Asia Minor, even reaching Ionia and Aeolia, holding this vast territory for 100 years. Jordanus also mentions that they fought with Hercules, and in the Trojan War, and that a smaller contingent of them endured in the Caucasus Mountains until the time of Alexander. He mentions by name the queens Menelippa, Hippolyta, and Penthesilea. In the Grottoferrata version of Digene's Zacritus, the 12th century medieval epic of Basil, the Greek-Syrian knight of the Byzantine frontier, the hero battles with and kills the female warrior Maximo. She was descended from some Amazons, taken by Alexander from the Brahmins. Lists. There are several lists of names of Amazons. Quintus Smyrnius lists the attendant warriors of Penthesilea. Clone was there, Polemusa, Derino, Evangdre, and Antandre, and Bramusa, Hippotho, Dark-eyed Harmutho, Alcebe, Derimachea, Antibrote, and Thermodosa glorying with the spear. Diodorus Siculus lists 12 Amazons who challenged Heracles to single combat during his quest for Hippolyta's girdle and died against him one by one. Iella, Philippish, Protho, Eribia, Seleno, Eurybia, Phoebe, Deianira, Asteria, Marp, Tecmessa, Alcip. After Alcipe's death, a group attack followed. Another list of Amazons' names is found in Hyginus of Fabulae. Along with Hippolyta, Otrara, Antiope and Penthesilea, it attests the following names: Ocyle, Dioxip, Iphonomath, Xanthe, Hippotho, Laromish, Glauca, Agave, Theseus, Clymene, Polydora. Yet another different set of names is found in Valerius Flaccus Argonautica. He mentions Uriel, Harp, Lyce, Menipperantho. Of these, Lyce also appears in a fragment preserved in the Latin anthology where she is said to have killed the hero Clonus of Moesia, son of Doriclus, with her javelin. John Zetzes in Post-Homerica enumerates the Amazons who fell at Troy: Hippotho, Antianera, Toxophone, Toxoanassa, Gortysa, Iodosa, Ferrata, Andro, Ioxia, Oistrophe, Androdaxa, Aspidocham, Enchesimargos, Nemes, Thors, Chalcaror, Eurylopa, Hecate, Anchimesh, Andromache the Queen. Concerning Antianera and Andromache, see below. For almost all the other names on the list, this is a unique attestation. Stephanus of Byzantium provides an alternate list of the Amazons who fell against Heracles, describing them as the most prominent of their people: Trala, Isocratia, Tiber, Palla, Coea, Kenia. Eustathius gives the same list minus the last two names. Both Stephanus and Eustathius write of these Amazons in connection with the place name Tebais, which they report to have been derived from Tiber's name. Other names of Amazons from various sources include Aegea, Queen of the Amazons, who was thought by some to have been the eponym of the Aegean Sea. Aenia, presumably accompanied Penthesilea to the Trojan War, killed by Achilles, known only from an Attic terracotta relief fragment. Enipa, an Amazon who confronted Telamon in the battle against Heracles' troops. Alce, who was said to have killed the young Eubalus of Arcadia, son of Ida, with her spear during the Parthian War. Amestris, who was believed to be the eponym of the city previously known as Cromna, although the city was also thought to have been named after the historical Amestris. Aeneas, an Amazon whose tomb was shown at the island of Samos. Andromache, an Amazon who fought Heracles and was defeated, only known from vase paintings. Not to be confused with Andromache, wife of Hector. Antianera succeeded Penthesilea as queen of the Amazons. She was best known for ordering her male servants to be crippled, as the lame best perform the acts of love. Erato and Iphyta, two little-known Amazons, whose names are only attested in inscriptions on artifacts. Cleite, one of the 12 followers of Penthesilea. After Penthesilea's death she, in accord with the former's will, sailed off and eventually landed in Italy, founding the city of Cleite. Syme, who gave her name to the city of Syme. Cinna, one of the two possible eponyms of Cinna, a small town not far from Heracles. Epheus, a Lydian Amazon, after whom the city of Ephesus was thought to have been named. She was also said to have been the first to honor Artemis and to have surnamed the goddess Ephesia. Her daughter Amazo was thought of as the eponym of the Amazons. Euryphile, queen of the Amazons, who was reported to have led an expedition against Ninus and Babylon around 1760 BCE. Grinna, an Amazon who was thought to be the eponym of the Grinneon grove in Asia Minor. She was loved by Apollo and consorted with him in said grove. Helen, daughter of Tityrus. She fought Achilles and died after he gravely wounded her. Hippo, an Amazon who took part in the introduction of religious rites in honor of the goddess Artemis. She was punished by the goddess for not having performed a ritual dance. Lampedo, queen of the Amazons, co-ruler with Marpesia. Latorea, who had a small village near Ephesus named after her. Lysippe, mother of Tanais by Berossos. Her son only venerated Ares and was fully devoted to war, neglecting love and marriage. Aphrodite cursed him with falling in love with his own mother. Preferring to die rather than give up his chastity, he threw himself into the river Amazonius, which was subsequently renamed Tanais. Marpesia, queen of the Amazons, co-ruler with Lampedo. Melanippe, sister of Hippolyta. Heracles captured her and demanded Hippolyta's girdle in exchange for her freedom. Hippolyta complied and Heracles let her go. According to some, however, she was killed by Telamon. Molpidia, an Amazon who killed Antiope. Milia, possible eponym of a city in Bithynia, which was later known as Apamea. Myrta, in one source, mother of Myrtilus by Hermes. Mytilene, Marina's sister and one of the possible eponyms for the city of Mytilene. Maximo, Oreithyia, daughter and successor of Marpesia, famous for her conquests. Otrara, consort of Ares and mother of Hippolyta and Penthesilea. Panthrosta, who killed Timiades in the battle between the Amazons and Heracles' troops. Pitane and Priene, two commanders in Myrina's army, after whom the cities of Pitane and Priene were named. Sanape, who fled to Pontus and married a local king. Sanape means from wine country in Circassian. According to a commentary, it was purported to mean drunkard in the local language. Sinope, successor of Lampedo and Marpesia. Sisabe, after whom a part of Ephesus was called Sisabe, and its inhabitants the Sisabitai. Smyrna, who obtained possession of Ephesus and gave her name to a quarter in this city, as well as to the city of Smyrna. Themyscira, the eponym of the Amazon capital. Hero cult. According to ancient sources, Amazon tombs could be found frequently throughout what was once known as the ancient Greek world. Some are found in Megara, Athens, Chaerone, Chalcis, Thessaly, Skotusa, in Cynocephali, and statues of Amazons are all over Greece. At both Chalcis and Athens, Plutarch tells us that there was an Amazoneum or shrine of Amazons that implied the presence of both tombs and cult. On the day before the Theseid Athens there were annual sacrifices to the Amazons. In historical times, Greek maidens of Ephesus performed an annual circular dance with weapons and shields that had been established by Hippolyta and her Amazons. They had initially set up wooden statues of Artemis, a Bretis. Description of Greece, Book 1, Attica. In art and works of art, battles between Amazons and Greeks are placed on the same level as, and often associated with, battles of Greeks and centaurs. The belief in their existence, however, having been once accepted and introduced into the national poetry and art, it became necessary to surround them as far as possible with the appearance of natural beings. Amazons were therefore depicted in the manner of Scythian or Sarmatian horsemen. Their occupation was hunting and war, their arms the bow, spear, axe, a half-shield, nearly in the shape of a crescent, called pelta, and in early art a helmet. The model in the Greek mind had apparently been the goddess Athena. In later art they approached the model of Artemis wearing a thin dress, girdle high for speed, while on the later painted vases their dress is often peculiarly Persian, that is, close-fitting trousers and a high cap called the kidrus. They were usually on horseback, but sometimes on foot. This depiction of Amazons demonstrates just how closely, in the Greek mind, the Amazons were linked to the Scythians. Their manner of dress has been noted to bear a striking similarity to the traditional dress of nomadic peoples from the Crimea to Mongolia. Amazons were described by Herodotus as wearing trousers and having tall stiff caps. The double-sided axe was the most emblematic of their weapons. Amazons can also be identified in vase paintings by the fact that they are wearing one earring. The battle between Theseus and the Amazons is a favorite subject on the friezes of temples, vases and sarcophagus reliefs. At Athens it was represented on the shield of the statue of Athena Parthenos. on wall paintings in the Theseum and in the Stoa Poikile. There were also 3 standard Amazon statue types. Later in the Renaissance, as Amazon myth evolved, artists started to depict warrior women in a new light. Queen Elizabeth was often thought of as an Amazon-like warrior during her reign and can be seen in many paintings as such, though, as explained in Divinia Viagra by Winfried Schleiner, Celeste T. Wright has given a detailed account of the bad press Amazons had in the Renaissance. She notes that she has not found any Elizabethans comparing the Queen directly to an Amazon, and suggests that they might have hesitated to do so because of the association of Amazons with enfranchisement of women, which was considered contemptible. Peter Paul Rubin and Jan Bruegel depicted the Battle of the Amazons around 1598, showing many attributes of Renaissance-styled paintings. Amazons also appear in the Rococo period in another painting titled Battle of the Amazons by Johann Georg Platzer. As a part of the Romantic period revival, German artist Anselm Feuerbach painted the Amazons as well. His paintings engendered all the aspirations of the Romantics.